quantum physics, non-classical physics is going in terms of, let's call it, their ideologies of what they're trying to prove. There's a parallel in Ayurveda or some of the traditional Chinese or some of the Buddhist texts of where these things are just being said in entirely different ways. So people don't always associate health with physics and the classical sciences, but it's really a representation of what is trying to be explained, you know, whether we're looking at the context of something very specific as a pattern or maybe even the entirety of the universe as we see it.
But also it was part of health in that chakras are torsion fields.
You are tuned in to the Everything's Energy podcast. I am your host, Roland, and people are fascinated by those who do things that are remarkable. And typically, remarkable things come from a remarkable origin story. We all know that the energy enhancement system is a unique piece of technology that's never really been seen before, and the person who created it has a remarkable story in and of herself. So I thought it'd be fun today to dig into the specific details of her origin story because it's something that you'll all really want to hear. So I want to welcome back Dr. Sandra Rose Michael to the podcast. Dr. Sandra, how are you doing today?
Oh, it's always great to have time with you. We always have such a good time sharing, and you know, it's just good for enlightening.
It is sharing the message and sharing the energy and the good vibes, right?
Yeah, it's fun. It's got to be fun.
So your origin story, you did not have a typical childhood. And I'm sure people have heard a lot of these details, but I don't think anyone's really had the time to dig into the specifics of that. I've always been fascinated about what prompted the genesis of the ability to create something such as this. So I'd like to actually get into the early years and figure out what created the great Dr. Sandra Rose Michael. What was her inspiration?
Yeah. Well, talk about origin stories. I mean, people always want to know, when did it start? How did you begin? Where did it start? And, well, it started for me when my parents met in engineering physics. So we have some of that. We have some of the things back to the engineering physics of courses and work of my mother, and because we are fruit of our parents, and there's genealogy. There's a lot of genealogy, and on my dad's side, I'm in the bloodline of Martin Luther, and they had the family farm that I grew up on, which was actually deeded by Andrew Jackson. Very interesting, President Andrew Jackson.
President Jackson.
So it was more than 100-year-old farm. Grew up on the farm, but and my dad's dad. I found this very recently. A picture of my dad's dad, Walter Boehner, Behner, Boehner, right? Picture of my dad's dad. And I do so much with veterans and stuff. And I knew he was a veteran, but I found this plaque when I was clearing through some things. And this was given to him in Little Rock, Arkansas, at Camp Pike, Little Rock, Arkansas. And it was awarded to him in 1917. Look at this plaque. Isn't that interesting?
Is it a gentleman sitting under a little pitch tent in the wilderness?
Yeah.
Our representative for human rights.
Our representative for human rights. There's a picture of him with his pup tent. He fought in the war and all that kind of stuff. And he had kind of a mysterious passing as far as he was in a parade. And there was intrigue around that as far as it was a military parade. And when I was about 3 years old. But I just found it interesting. Our representative for human rights, when you think about it, I'm a commissioner on the International Tribunal for Natural Justice.
You did say genealogy was a thing.
For crimes against humanity. And I never realized that he was the representative for human rights.
Wow.
I found that fascinating myself. So that's on my dad's side. I thought that was pretty interesting. And on my mother's side, they met in engineering physics. And so, I brought you from her engineering physics class. You see this one is physics.
General rules of convergence. And I'm looking at these equations, and basically it seems like it's Greek to me because I don't understand at all what I'm looking at.
Yeah, the physics, and I brought that folder of her from her courses, her classes, and we can laugh about this one.
So this was, I guess, promoted back in the day. This, although looks like a school folder, is an ad for Philip Morris cigarettes.
Yeah, Philip Morris cigarettes. This was a school folder for her. I think it must have been the college classes. I don't think they did that in high school. You know.
It says class schedule.
Yeah.
What's interesting, it says don't inhale. Maybe people just misinterpreted cigarettes this whole time.
Yeah, and you see it in what's risque about that, because this is back, that had to be 51 or 52. You see they have a woman on their ad. You know, remember originally cigarettes were only men. You never saw women in cigarette ads. So I thought that was really, really interesting. Philip Morris.
What a different world back then.
And you see what her physics course. My parents met in engineering physics. You see this folder right there? It says physics. Read what that is.
The electrostatic voltmeter. Its calibration and use. It seems like light reading.
So this is what I grew up with, as voltmeters and such. But this is from her work. I think does it have a date on that?
1952.
Yeah.
February 12th, 1952. Date of observations complete on Valentine's Day. Maybe that was one of their dates.
1952. Yeah, it's possible because they didn't marry until December of 52. Yeah. And so it's kind of a funny thing. My mother was the nuclear physicist, and my dad, the electrical, mechanical, structural engineer, both hyper geniuses. And they met in engineering physics at Ohio State. And it's kind of a funny story how they met, because they would both later joke about how they were blind in one eye and couldn't see out of the other. They're two nerds, four-eyed nerds, right? And my mother was like the only woman in engineering physics in the first place. But she didn't want to wear glasses, because there was a thing back then that guys don't make passes at gals that wear glasses.
Put everything into a rhyme. It's easy to remember.
So that was a thing. And so she didn't want to wear her glasses, and she thought my dad was her lab partner.
Maybe she wanted him to be her lab partner. Well, then again, if she couldn't see, probably was an honest mistake.
But it really relates to my childhood in that growing up, there's a lab partner. Anything and everything was a science experiment for me growing up. Everything was, it didn't matter what it was a science experiment for me growing up. And it was kind of funny that way, because they were both genius scientists. And so she was a nuclear physicist, and she had gone through all the top secret government clearances and things, and ended up signing up with Battelle Labs. I don't think Ava can see this so well, but this is from early 1953, actually.
It's amazing you still have all of us.
Yeah, the electronic slide rule. This is the first computer.
I was going to say, that looks like the computer in the movie The Imitation Game. Gigantic room-sized thing.
Yeah, literally. This was the first computers in Battelle Labs. But this is Battelle News. And I have her contract of how she signed. But she went through all these security clearances. And then she was fissioning plutonium in those labs. Now, of course, this was top secret then, and she could never talk about it even. Officially, she was a photographer.
Officially. Or does that mean unofficially she was unofficially she was a photographer, right? That was her cover?
That was her cover.
Okay.
No, that's officially.
Oh.
That was her cover. She was a photographer. But she was really fissioning plutonium in the labs the whole time. Well, they met, and so she was, fissioning plutonium in the labs the whole time she was pregnant with me.
A joke just came to mind. You know that term, a glowing mother? It might have been a little bit more specific in that context.
Yeah. Well, and so the joke is I know radiation literally inside out because I remembered it all vividly too, and I would talk to her about it.
Wow. What would she say when you talked to her about it and you said you remember it all? Like, what was that interaction like?
Recently, before she passed, I said, "Oh, that was your happiest time." She, yeah, it really was. But I was really just a photographer.
Yeah. She upheld it to the end of time, right?
It was funny. Yeah. My parents met, and of course, it's kind of such an interesting journey that all makes us part of who we are and what we're here for. And I like to explain to people, how everything of your past helps you to know your purpose. You wouldn't have all these things if you didn't need those specific things to be able to fulfill your highest purpose.
Mm-hmm.
And being here on this planet at this time is such an amazing time on the planet. And so I needed all this homework coming in, evidently, but my parents, where did two nerdy scientists go for their honeymoon? From Ohio.
I know the answer to this, but other people might not know the answer to this.
Well, they went to Niagara Falls.
Tesla inspired.
But why? The real reason is Tesla's power plant.
Mm-hmm.
And they were studying that.
Were they actually studying things on their honeymoon together?
Probably.
That's adorable and nerdy at the same time.
But that's why they went there, is Tesla's power plant.
Wow.
And that's, and see, but part of the joke on my mother, if you want to call her mother told her if she douched on her wedding night, she wouldn't get pregnant. So you've got two brilliant scientists. My mother never wanted to be a mother.
Really?
No, she did not want to have kids. She didn't want to be a housewife, didn't want to cook, didn't want to clean. None of that.
Just wanted to play in the lab.
Yeah. So her mother told her if she douched on her wedding night, she wouldn't get pregnant. And so then it became this whole thing that, she wasn't this great research scientist or couldn't be that, all because of me.
Hmm.
Because in the 50s, as soon as she had me, then, she had to, she couldn't keep working.
Do you think that negatively impacted you in any context? Like, did it push you to have to achieve in any specific way because of the dynamic with her?
Absolutely.
Okay.
With doing regression work and rebirthing work, I've done so much of that with people. And when I was born, there was a thing from my dad, another damn female.
That was yeah.
So I became an overachiever from that. I'll prove I'm as good as any.
Oh, interesting.
So there was a piece of that. But the gift from my mother, because she was like a mad scientist stuck on mad. So there wasn't a lot of real bonding because she resented me so much. But the gift of that is I stayed totally bonded to spirit. So I didn't lose all my memories of being in the womb or the past life stuff or what all was going on between them and all these things. So I came in with the memories and with the lineage.
Interesting. Is that a thing that is common to people if they maybe have a fractured relationship with a parent? There's a lack of being able to feel that love. Do you think that influences, say, their connectivity for life? It influences the trajectory of where they go as a defining quality? Because it seems that was a big one for you.
Yeah, I mean, it's part of that underlying origin story that helped motivate me to be who I am. Or, if there'd been more bonding with her, I probably wouldn't have stayed as totally bonded to spirit as I was.
Mm-hmm.
But it was challenging. It was challenging as a child, because from the time I could talk, I was talking about the mad Atlantean scientists and the abuse of power. And what did I get for parents? Because I was still pissed about it.
Mad scientists. Would they ever push back at that stuff? Or would they ever say, what are you talking about?
Yeah, well, my mother did get books on, started researching Atlantis. Later on, she decided that.
When she finally dropped the resistances,
Later on, she decided it might be all of the devil.
Oh boy. That religious layer, right?
The religious piece kicked in. But before that, she was open to, and because we had books in the house then on Atlantis. And I mean, that was one of the gifts of our house is we had all the books. We had every encyclopedia set that as they came out. And so I grew up being a researcher that way. And there was a lot of gifts to how I was brought in with everything being a science project, so.
Well, I mean, I've heard of the Invisible Man. I'm looking at something that's called the Visible Woman. So was this a toy in the family's household? Like not a ball, not a doll or a Barbie. It was a digestive system, a skeletal system.
Other kids played with Barbies and doll babies and things. This was my dolls.
You're determining if your doll had colitis by examining its colon.
And I did have different medical things that way, where I was always looking at the body and the different components of the body and things, and analyzing and researching and all that. But yeah, this is the Visible Woman, and I was so excited when I found this in the attic, clearing out my parents' house. It's like, oh my God. Because it was such an important part of my life, the Visible Woman and the Visible Man. And so really understanding anatomy.
Well, I can see that you literally have all of your anatomy labeled right here. And there's instructions.
Yeah, so that's my idea of playing with dolls, okay?
Now,
and I joke about it, but I do have the proof to show that one, don't I? It's kind of funny.
Was this stuff encouraged and supported, or was it more mandated? Like, did your parents want you to be remarkable from the get-go, or were they allowing you to develop your own sense of your personal interest and where you wanted to take it?
They were both pretty pushy.
They both were. Okay.
In a lot of ways. Aggressive, pushy.
High expectations?
High expectations, but I was doing all the top secret government science experiments as a kid, all of Tesla's experiments, all that, like my mom was working on the bomb, literally fissioning plutonium, working on the bomb. My dad worked on stealth bombers.
A lot of aggression in those hobbies, or indirect aggression.
So I came in going, how do we heal all this with the remembrance of Atlantis, which is the most parallel time? They got the same mad Atlantean scientists stuff going on right now on the planet.
When you say parallel, like a different iteration of where humanity's developed to.
Yeah.
So we're at that critical point right now.
Yeah, we're at that, so my whole thing is let's create a cataclysm of consciousness rather than a cataclysm of the planet. So I came in on that trajectory of that mission, so to speak, and needed these parents. But it was rough as a kid because I'm going, let me out of here. They haven't been my parents a single past life. Where are my temples? Where are my healing temples? And so, we've brought that forward now to creating healing temples all over the world. But I came in going, I made a wrong turn. What am I doing in Ohio? Where are my temples? And these haven't been my parents a single life. In doing the regression work, actually I had the memories too, where my mother had tried to kill me in a past life, had tried to take my life. And her karma was she had to give me life this life. And that's why it was still a karmic rough relationship, so to speak, which all has healed with her crossing and passing.
Yeah, you said there's some beautiful opportunities for healing there.
Yeah, beautiful, beautiful healing. As far as what it took for me to, be who I am and do what I do and share what I shared. But yeah, my dad, he worked on, I'm looking at, these were just some of the ones, as a structural design engineer, etc. But he worked on F-100Fs, B-70s, F-108, F-107s, A-31 Vigilantes.
So those are all old fighter jets, right?
Oh, yes. So he was with North American Aviation. So I have the plant rules and stuff. But when I was young, so this was part of and I'm going, how do we heal all of this? This is crazy. But when I was young, with North American Aviation, I was like 5 years old. We went to LA because he was working on a very important contract for this F-108 Rapier. I don't know.
We'll go with how it's spelled. It sounds like
Mach 3. Mach 3. So he worked on Mach 3 for North American Aviation out of California. And they called it the Air Force's Mach 3 Interceptor. But he sent me this in 2014. Now, I was 5, so it would have been 1958. I was born in 1953. So 1958 is when he was in California working on this. This was not declassified until 2014.
So he sat on that until he could share it.
Mm-hmm. Isn't that interesting?
It is.
Yeah, it is. Just a lot of interesting stuff that way. But the things I grew up with, Institute of Nuclear Studies. This was when I was 10, so I was doing all these experiments. United States Aerospace Nuclear Power Programs. Now this was his college course, Experiments in Electricity. From this college course, I did all these experiments, the college course on electricity, as a kid. I thought everybody built transducers and receivers. Oh, this one's actually, my dad signed on one side and my mother signed on the other. Maybe they shared these experiments, but they certainly shared them with me.
That was called a weekend getaway for those two back in the day. Let's drop the kids off and we'll go do some electrical experiments.
Yeah, so not exactly totally normal. I joke about the German engineering brain. There is something to that. But these were the experiments. I did all of this whole course when I was a kid. Transducers, receivers, circuit boards, antenna. But of course, we had our Tesla coils and rockets, and I had collections of Geiger counters because it was all the radiation issues, which I'm here to heal for the planet, is the radiation issues. And, and gyroscopes were my big thing, gyroscopes.
What's a gyroscope, just for everyone who's listening, in case they don't know?
They'll have to look it up because I can't even begin to explain. It's a torsion field, essentially.
Okay.
But it's a device that creates a torsion field and used in aerodynamics. And there's a lot of practical application to it, but it's really torsion field.
We had very different childhoods.
Yeah. So, people wonder what happened. Yeah. But that's what I grew up doing, all of those crazy experiments and studying all that. My mother was in Mensa, belonged to Mensa, and that was another kind of a gift, her belonging to Mensa. And for people that don't know, that's the top 1% of IQ.
Right here. The 1967 registry is here, and her name is right here, Lois.
Yeah, and she was in it for years before that, but this is maybe this is the first they came out with a full registry, or I don't know. It's the only registry I found is from 1967.
What is the IQ cutoff? Is it 160 plus for Mensa?
It's in just the top 1% of IQs.
That would have to be at least 160 plus, because, if 100's average, you're multiple standard deviations above the average.
Yeah. And she had to pass all kinds of tests. And I remember, her talking about all the testing she went through to be able to join Mensa. And of course, I was offered membership later because I tested above 99th percentile on both the ACT and the SAT tests.
Mm-hmm.
So when I tested above 99th percentile, that was one of my moments that was very traumatizing for me, challenging.
Why would that be?
Because I was called into the principal's office or what, or the guidance counselor or something, and he sat me down and said, "You tested, you know, above 99th percentile on both of these." And I went, "Oh my gosh, we're really in trouble on this planet. If my brain is the best there is on this planet, we've got a problem." And I'm going, wait a minute, if I'm in the top, that means less than 1% of people can relate to me, or what do I do with this? So how do we, how's this going to work? So it was kind of traumatizing to try to sort that out in my mind.
Mm-hmm.
And I also tested in, top in the state of Ohio. Not first, but I was first in one or two of them. But I tested topped in the top 3 or something in the state of Ohio in Latin, English, and math. So I had all the college level math, algebra, all those things. But you see what, all the physics. I grew up with that physics and all the calculations and all that, because it was innate to us. I grew up, of course, I also had the advanced biology, anatomy, but specifically biology. We did dissections and all that kind of stuff. So it really was college level biology, which is very fitting. And of course, the Latin serves so well in all the scientific arenas and understanding it's the base of all the languages and things like that.
Communication, but also in the ability to identify things and understand what's being uncovered. I don't like to use the word discovered because it was already here. Someone just realized it.
Yeah, it was interesting for me because the Latin teacher that I had was only there the 2 years that I had him. And he drove from Columbus, Ohio to Marion, Ohio. Only the 2 years I had him. And we'd go into class going, let's see what we can get him off on today. Because he could see auras, he'd bring in pictures of UFOs.
So he was not your typical educational professional.
No, he was vegetarian. He'd tell kids to change their thoughts. So we'd see what we could get him distracted into other topics.
So just don't have to do Latin.
Yeah. And he was vegetarian and the reasons why. But I would sit in his class and flash back to past lives where I spoke Latin.
Isn't that called, that's a weird cheating in a way? It's like, how do you know this before it's taught to you?
Yeah.
Let's go pull it from the field.
Yeah. And that's how I tested top in Ohio and Latin. But I also did speed reading. And see, these were things that I learned and was encouraged to work with in a sense. But I would read my Latin declinations and all that into a recorder and play that as I was going to sleep. So it was sleep learning. I would also sleep on my books. And then tell my unconscious, subconscious mind to read them in my sleep and absorb it. I also had my dad had a totally photographic memory for every plane from tip to tail and cars and all that. I had a photographic memory, but in a different way. I could remember where something was on the page and re-access.
Your dad was more facts and figures and specific details.
More the engineering side,
makes sense.
Of design details.
Yeah.
He had that brain of design details. I mean, all very precise. I mean, which it has to do with that German engineering brain, precision and detail-oriented. And being a Virgo, I'm very detail-oriented anyway, and a researcher. But one of the gifts with Mensa, so my mother had, brought in these Mensa brain training tools. Yeah, that one of them was a thing for speed reading. And this was the number one gift I got from Mensa. I mean, one of the other gifts that were really big on talking about logic, and the principles of logic and how important logic was. And I thought, oh, how boring. It's so logical. I didn't really appreciate that until we hit COVID, when there was no logic to anything.
I don't know if that logic's totally rebounded yet either.
There was no logic. You could not find a shred of logic. But so I learned the importance later of logic. But the one gift was we had a slide device that would give it had a shutter, and it would give one word at a time, then two words at a time. You could go to 3 words, sentences, phrases, paragraphs with a shutter speed. And you could get that faster and faster and faster. So this is how I played, just challenging myself. But one of the biggest gifts then was speed reading. I became a voracious speed reader. And a researcher, I want all the information. So I would have every encyclopedia out, and I was reading encyclopedias cover to cover by 3rd grade. So so a little different that way, I guess.
I'm curious, and then this is just a totally off-the-cuff question that's come into me as I'm hearing you talk. Have you ever parsed out the individual ways that your mom and your dad may have influenced the development of the EE technology? Like, have you ever sat there and gone, this part came from the mechanical engineering side, this part came from the, was it engineering physics? No, engineering physics with your dad.
Everything's engineering physics.
Yes, okay, everything.
Engineering physics. Yeah. My mother's a nuclear physicist, so my whole concept of healing, of reversing all the issues of radiation came from being in the womb. And how do we heal all of this? I mean, she was working on the bomb. He's working on stealth bombers. Oh my God. And I just want to heal the planet. I just want to heal the world. I mean, I came in that way. So there's that. But there was a lot of mentoring on the farm as far as understanding animals and nature.
The cycle is the nature.
Yeah. So, but everything being a science project, and I think it was 4th or 5th grade, or in the 4-H. I had organic gardens. But you're testing the soil, you're doing all the companion planning, you're analyzing and studying and researching all those different components. My thing with the engineering physics, I see everything as engineering physics. So I could put my hands around the animals and watch how the energy would go through like a circuitry. I see that as electrical, mechanical, structural engineering with physics. All life is energy. And you see how that life force energy moves through. So I could hold my hands there. I could also, I came in with a lot of, I guess, capabilities. To me, it was just normal, of astral projecting and things like that, where, I'd freak my parents out. Sometimes I'd tell them what they were doing and I was in my crib or things like that.
What did they think of your first chambers and the various things you started to create that was the formative technology that eventually created the EE system?
Yeah. It was like growing up with all of that, and then going into research from high school. I went straight into choosing my college years and things, but I went straight into the research into health.
And that wasn't something that they were necessarily familiar with, was it? Like, that was you carving your own path more, or going into the health world.
It became my focus of health and healing, partly because I was so sick as a child, too.
Really?
Yeah.
Physically? Physically.
Well, all that radiation poisoning. Yeah, but and in Ohio, it's pretty brutal in the winter in a drafty farmhouse.
I don't miss winter.
Yeah, so I had strep throat 3 or 4 times a year. I was given penicillin and sulfa drugs and all that.
So you had to go on your own healing journey in addition to doing all the other stuff.
Yeah, because my health was not good at all.
Wow.
Yeah, and so that became a whole focus and reading thousands, anything and everything on health and healing that I could get. Yeah. And studying. I started, in 1971 already, even I started in, studying with a chiropractor. I studied with masters besides studying the books, but chiropractic, reflexology, nutrition, Ayurveda. I studied studying Sanskrit, which is the Vedas. That was another whole side of things, from the Vedas. I mean, I had studied the Bible, read it cover to cover multiple times by the time I was 12, and I had every translation of the Bible and figure out what they translated into what, when, where, why, and how, because I'm in that bloodline. But then I also studied the Vedas, which are the best books on physics on the planet.
It's funny you say that.
Knowledge, and they were written down more than 5,000 years ago. So that was another whole chunk of serious, in-depth research.
Why I say it's funny you say that is, I believe now it's starting to become apparent. It's showing itself that, say, where quantum physics, non-classical physics is going in terms of, let's call it their ideologies of what they're trying to prove, there's a parallel in Ayurveda or some of the traditional Chinese or some of the Buddhist texts of where these things are just being said in entirely different ways. So people don't always associate health with physics and the classical sciences, but it's really a representation of what is trying to be explained, whether we're looking at the context of something very specific as a pattern or maybe even the entirety of the universe as we see it.
But also it was part of health in that chakras are torsion fields.
Yeah.
They're the energy vortexes in the body.
Toroids.
Yeah, I was studying chiropractic. All the nerves run through the spine. That's all the electrical impulses. Everything is information in the body. So it had more of the expanded information on really the biophysics, as well, besides, just the best information on physics. So it was, a lot of research and development that way. And then also early 70s, I started studying Rife and the frequency specific things. And I worked with different frequency specific modalities that way, or creating those different frequencies. Of course, I had grown up studying different frequencies that way. But I worked also with radionics, which was really, really useful to understand, and trained in radionics. And these are things that people can look up and learn more about. You'll find it fascinating, but also studied photonics and studied John Ott's work, particularly on the effects of light on the body,
light
on the
shaping
pineal
life,
gland, and on the hormonal functions and things like that. The importance of light and how that works with our biology. I mean, it's really applied integrated biophysics when you put all these different modalities and research and things together. But I also studied exercise physiology and anatomy physiology that way. So it was always advanced.
I mean, it's endless, right? There's nothing, I don't think, in the world of health and in sciences that you haven't touched on. I wanted to ask, you mentioned something earlier that was interesting. And I don't know if anyone's ever asked you this directly before in a podcast setting. Your mom never got to live out her dream, her passion, because she didn't want to be a mom. Obviously, you've been a mother, but you've also been on this journey as a female in an environment that has probably not had too many female compatriots along the way. Have you felt like you've carried any of her stuff forward where you've tried to help her through your own achievement and success?
Always trying to bring her really highest purpose to full fruition, not for doing bombs, but for healing the world. She did fission and I did fusion.
You balanced out the other side of the axis.
Fusion for healing is called nuclear fusion. So it's really, but it goes back to all my understandings of nuclear studies. But I grew up with all that nuclear. That's why it's kind of interesting that I also came in with this whole intention of how do we heal all of it. And my dad also, he was Humanitarian of the Year, 2005. Everybody loved my dad.
Oh, no way.
Yeah. So the humanitarian focus, he was in every organization for helping people. Now, my mother, on the other hand, was an expert. My dad had such powerful people skills. And
was he like an extrovert, very gregarious guy?
He was known for his jokes, and but he, it was interesting. But he was like president or vice president or treasurer of Civitan, and he taught. I don't have that here. He taught navigation. He ran Power Squadron. He taught navigation till he died. Was still teaching all the principles of navigation. I grew up with boats, and we grew up with all these different things, but he was, so many different Civitan and junior achievement was one of the things that he was a big executive with, junior achievement. So they pushed me into, junior achievement's about learning entrepreneurial skills of what it takes to start a company.
Because usually when you're in the sciences, you don't get taught how to navigate the business world so much.
Yeah. And he thought that was really important to support, how people can understand business and industry and what that looks like. So there were a lot of pieces. Big Brother, he was part of that. Just so many different things. So he was a true humanitarian and massive people skills. Everybody loved him. Versus my mother was different.
Different.
She was 2 + 2 = 513 or something, because her brain was just on such a different computational place.
She was experiencing a different density of reality than others will say.
And she would, and she would get thrown out of church groups because she would piss people off so bad.
Sometimes when someone sees all that logic, they have a hard time accepting maybe that's what this person believes currently. It might not be.
She was a master at pissing people off. She was a master at trying to make other people, at just making other people wrong to try to feel more right. God. She wasn't happy with herself.
That's a hard thing to carry.
Yeah, it was just, the self-criticism got played out as being hypercritical of anybody and everybody else, and especially with me. I was damned if I did, damned if I didn't, anywhere in between as a child. And so by the time I hit high school, I realized there wasn't going to be any way to please her, no matter what I did. I was damned if I did, damned if I didn't, damned anywhere in between. So, but I also realized if I rebelled against her, I still wasn't being me.
Powerful statement.
Yeah, so it wasn't. I was rebellious. I would rebel, like I said, with my mother. But if I was rebelling, I still wasn't being true to me. So, so I realized it's really everything is between us and God. That's it. I'm here on a mission to serve God. It's all between me and God, kind of thing. So that's part of the gift I got from my mother.
It's beautiful when you can tease out those indirect gifts, right? Because the nemesis of every high achiever is satisfaction with achievement. It's like chasing a moving finish line, so maybe in some ways with her lack of achievement that was projected unconsciously or maybe consciously onto you, and nothing was ever enough because she didn't ever get to achieve what her definition of enough might have been.
Yeah. I mean, and she was, it was like I wouldn't get to do something I wanted to do until I finished reading like Atlas Shrugged.
Oh, light reading.
Light reading.
Yeah. So there was a lot of expectations.
Things like that.
What are some things that you admired most about them and what they did, who they were, and what they taught you? I know it's a tough question because there's probably a lot, but maybe if you take a second and just something that may come through.
Yeah. Well, the gift was how they did support, all the learning. We always had a house full of books. So learning was very, very high on the priority.
Mm.
And everything was a science project. So I still play that out, on Thursdays. So
I mean,
I still play
putting hydrogen in water.
Science project. So this is our hydrogen bottle. This was a lot of the experiments. So, we were all, like I said, they met in the lab as lab partners. Everything was a lab experiment. I mean, we did so much, chemistry and all that too. I did the advanced chemistry courses too, college level chemistry courses and stuff. But we like hydrogen. That's a real basis of everything.
I think good hydrogen water is probably what the gut ordered from time to time, or what the immune system ordered.
So that was a lot of the gift.
Yeah.
And music. They were both very into music, which is all math.
I was going to say a lot of mathematicians. I interviewed someone recently who's a musician, but he said if he didn't go into music, he was going to be a particle physicist. So you don't usually think that was like plan A and B, but music is all math.
Yeah, music is all math. Yeah. And my dad played instruments, and he played clarinet mostly in a band and stuff. He was into Sousa's marching music, and of course in marching music. I marched in a lot of parades as head majorette. The whole baton thing.
Okay.
Is that scalar wave.
That's an infinity symbol.
Infinity symbol. So, I started twirling baton from, I had to have it. I think I was 3 years old. I had my first baton. Had to have it. But I was head majorette and in the marching bands and things like that. It's kind of interesting that whole, how things play out. And my mother loved singing Handel's Messiah. Loved it. So the music piece was very important. The devotion, they were
religious faith you're talking about.
Yeah.
Relationship with God, connection to something bigger.
And being Lutheran, I studied all the religions and things, but the Lutheran, Martin Luther was the first protester, right? Yeah. And that it was all about having a personal relationship in God, and that we're meant to read the Bibles ourselves, so that whole German thing on that side of the importance of reading the Bible. So that was part of the gift and understanding that. So it's an interesting life.
It's, to say the least. Interesting is one of those words that says everything and says nothing, because so much is encompassed in there. And all the stuff that you've shown today, I think it helps give us a snapshot of, like what I said in the beginning, having a remarkable experience in life of creating something unique. The origin story behind it all really is the powerful catalyst as to why that's come to be. So, I've enjoyed hearing all these stories and getting a little peek behind the curtain of who you are in a different context.
Yeah, a little different context. And it went from there, as far as everything is research and study, to the nth degree. My technology was developed, from studying what creates health and healing. I built my first Scalar Healing Light Chamber after doing all kinds of research and experiments. I built my first Scalar Healing Light Chamber after running spas. I had my own spa. When I had my own spa, then I designed my first Scalar Healing Light Chamber.
And here we are in 2025, and that was
1978. My first Scalar Healing Light Chamber with things from NASA, and I was running a power management equipment company because of my deep understanding of electrical power management and things like that. I was running a power management equipment company and running spas before that. And then I was doing my own spa, and with the specific geometries and special lights, with power management equipment, all this, we, had our first one we were just talking about autoimmune, total reversals of, even back then in 1978, total reversals of lupus and leukemia and cancers and all kinds of things, totally healing. So, that's been my passion then. It's the blessing. It's the gift that I focused on.
It's been the journey. That's why origin stories are so powerful, because it's not just the what, like it's the why behind it all.
Yeah.
Have you had any, how can I ask this in a way that makes sense? Both your parents are obviously no longer with us. They're no longer in body. Have you had any conversation with
They did
them?
make it to that first Scalar Healing Light Chamber.
They did. Did they use it?
In Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
Yes, they did. They did get in it and try it and use it.
Did they finally give you the congratulatory pat on the back, or was it, it could be this, or could be that, could do that?
I thought it was interesting. Of course, I had a juice bar. I had we talked earlier, the last segment on doing the baths.
Salt baths, yeah.
I had individual bath and salt glow tables, marble salt for doing the salt glows and herbal wraps. I had the sauna, the steam, but I had acupressure facials. I had all organic skincare. I had an all organic juice bar. This is 1978, but especially I created my own detox bath formulas for that spa, and besides all the exercise equipment and the rebounders, I had what is his name? Al Carter.
I don't know that name.
He wrote the initial books on. He was I think an Olympian athlete at trampoline, but wrote all the books on rebounding and the importance of rebounding and how that pumps the lymphatic system. The importance of that. So I had him at my spa. We had the rebounders, but I had already had all that exercise physiology courses and things like that too. So it's been an interesting journey. But one of the biggest things that has been an overriding principle was my dad's favorite Bible verse. And people might know it, Romans 8:28. But this we put on his memorial. It's all things, and we know, all things work together for good for those who love God. Or I like to say, for those who love and trust God. All things, not some things. All things work together for good for those who love and trust God. And so I really got that gift from the depth of my parents' spirituality that way, even though it was more in the religious framework of,
It still applies. It still guides the principles of how you live your life.
Yeah.
That's amazing. I think that's most wonderful way to wrap up a nice origin story. Dr. Sandra, thank you for sharing all of this deeply personal and intimate stuff. I mean, people have heard the stories, but it's so nice to see, the relics of the past that come together to create all this. And
yeah, I mean, at home and just going through some of the archives, and somebody had mentioned, well, where's the proof of who her parents were? Well, I think we've got some.
We got some and then some. So I mean, yeah, it's off camera I was digging into some of this stuff, and it's just so cool to see. I think I said to you, holding this paper of someone who's no longer in body, feeling that they imprinted their will of existence on this and they're not here anymore. There was like an eerie, not negative eerie, but a spooky, surreal feeling with that, because you don't get to really you don't think about that much when you just grab things day to day. We're so distracted in our life.
Kind of hits you
a little bit
when you open up and
it's like, she's not here anymore. This was part of her existence, as part of her reality in her inner world.
Looking at the calculations, the calculus, and looking at the penmanship.
Oh, no one writes like people used to nowadays.
I grew up with all the penmanship, and
my aunt used to criticize my writing all the time because she was born in the early 40s, and she had the most beautiful penmanship, and she used to lament society for stopping cursive and all that. But it's
and I practiced, because I was quite artistic too, so I practiced calligraphy as a kid also.
Why not?
Yeah, it was, it's interesting, the whole languaging and really studying, and I really studied a lot on how the brain works and different levels of consciousness, and self-hypnosis is probably one of the most important things I ever learned.
Yeah, you took it from the more classic material sciences and went into the more metaphysical, spiritual. I'd say it's a beautiful spectrum that you've covered in your lifetime.
Yeah, really, Paul Twitchell, In My Soul I Am Free. I mean, that was one of the ones I got. And when his book came out, I go, oh my gosh, I've been traveling with him at the other levels this whole, my whole life.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So like I said, the astral traveling, because, expanded consciousness, we are more than just these bodies. Expanded awareness. We are multidimensional, infinite, powerful beings, and we don't have any limitations other than what have been self-imposed. Christ said everything, and this is another gift. I mean, Christ said anything and everything he did and more were to do. And we can move mountains with the mustard seed of faith. So we're not limited to moving mountains. We've got a whole world that could use healing. Let's create a cataclysm of consciousness. The Great Awakening will not be stopped. We're in this time of the turning. And I came in with this knowing I am here for the dawning of the new heaven and the new earth. And so we're going into the new earth. It's time of the great turning of the ages. You could call it apocalypse, revelation. It's the great revealing, the great unveiling.
And I'm optimistic for it all. People can be pessimistic or catastrophic, and ultimately it's all going to be beautiful. It's all going to work out for us.
All things work together for good for those who love and trust. And so that's the main message I want to leave with people. That's probably one of my biggest guiding principles.
Thank you to your father for that one. Cheers. Thank you very much for all this information, Dr. Sandra. It's been absolutely incredible. And you're right, you and I always do get into some very cool conversations, and I know this won't be the last. But with that, I will thank everyone for being here. If you are enjoying this content, please like, subscribe, share this with anyone you feel called to, and we will be back with great content coming up in the near future. We'll see you then.